Hello, everyone. Uh, can you hear me well right now? I think so. And welcome to today's session, a webinar about Enterprise Risk Management, ERM, by CFE certification. I would like to introduce myself first. My name is Ezgi Özdemir. I am a risk professional and I have been working in this field more than 10 years. I currently developing business in CFE Search. You can submit your questions via chat or QA section, and I will try to get to all of them. During the presentation, I will be focused on the presentation. However, I will try to answer them at the end of the webinar. If I don't get to all of you, then I will personally email you or call you after the webinar to get an answer to you, as we have limited time. When it comes to risk, there are lots of definitions come into our minds, but basically the risk is delta, and I want to start with the meaning of risk. There is a definition of risk, which is any situation that reveals deviation from the planned objectives. Accordingly, risk also indicates potential problems, threats, dangers, and that may occur in the future. And with the definition of risk, the concepts of threat and uncertainty naturally come into the mind. However, it should be emphasized that threats and uncertainties also reveal some searches for organizations. Therefore, risk is considered as an important factor that brings opportunities with itself. To summarize, risk is a threat if hazard arising from unexpected events. Risk is uncertainty if it's caused by changes, and risk is opportunity if it can be used positively. There is a good definition of risk from Gartner Technology Research. It says risk management ensures that the organization takes as much risk as it can bear. Thus, the organization will grow at the highest rate possible. Risk management maximizes positive risk while minimizing negative risk. In here, positive risk means the opportunity, and the negative risk means the threat, as I mentioned in the last slide. What is risk and what is not is so important. Risk is not only a negative situation that needs to be brought under control, but it's also an opportunity. Risk is not managed just by the units, departments. It's a holistic concept and it's managed corporately. Risks are not managed only by department management, and they are managed corporately by top management and department management together. Chris Kite from Cisco defines risk with a good example. He says the reason why racing cars have brakes and steering wheels is that they want to win the race. I want to give you an example of the concept of the opportunity while considering risk. It's a success story achieved by a company that is an international cargo transportation company, which has a major risk management process. They faced a threat in 2010, which can be a good example of an opportunity side of the risk. In this example, this transportation company's risk and threats has been well managed, so they success in this incident. This transportation company had assessed the risk of failure to provide cargo services to its customers in Europe as a result of the closure of the European airspace to the flight traffic due to various threats such as terrorist attack on aircraft, fog, rain, etc. And they recorded the possible loss as loss of customers, revenue, and reputation, As a result of this assessment, the company took actions to ensure alternative transportation strategies in case of the occurrence of the risk. And this assessment was to be able to deliver its cargo and its transportation to its customers in Europe without major delays in case of a threat or an incident. Thus, they aim to be least affected by the negative effects, the risk of the threat. In 2010, maybe you might remember, there was a huge incident that most of the organizations never predicted. A volcano called Eyjafjallajökull in Iceland broke its 200-year silence and started spraying lava. Ash clouds erupting from the volcano caused many airports across Europe to shut down and stop air transportation. The mentioned cargo, I mentioned before that they had the risk assessment before about that. They rapidly implemented alternative transportation strategies. They previously directed all its flights from Asia to Europe to Istanbul and quickly delivered the products to the addresses. And as a result, the negative impact of the volcano threat to the company was minimal, and the reputation of the firm increased, and they gained new customers as the company delivered its cargo to its existing and new customers as the company then they were faster than their competitors. Other cargo transportation companies were negatively affected by the volcano incident. They could not deliver on time, and many risks occurred, such as loss of customers, revenue, and reputation. This example shows how organizations turn the risk into opportunities. And I want to talk about the development of ERM, enterprise risk management. Before there was a concept of traditional risk management, and the development of process management over time is very similar to the development of risk processes. While traditional risk management is vertical and disconnected, ERM is a holistic structure. Let me explain. For example, if the sales team misses passing a single customer complaint about a product to the quality team, it can cause customer dissatisfaction, which can result in repetitive and serious loss. In the slide, you can see the vertical traditional process and the structure, and then we conducted some corporate integrated structure as organizations. It created interaction and common goals, and the result was process management and enterprise risk management. It is a holistic concept. The purpose of enterprise risk management is to identify the risks and opportunities, to identify vulnerabilities, to assess and measure risks, to decide about the risks, to manage risks, and to conduct action plans to reduce the score of the risk to acceptable levels of the organization. Via action plans, we call it mitigation plans, risk mitigation plans. And ERM depends on the corporate culture and is evaluated together with the targets at strategic and tactical levels, the sectors in which the company is in, the business strategies and targets, global effects, external environmental effects, geography in which the business operates, macroeconomic indicators, legal regulations, social responsibility, communication, and so on. All are the part of risk management. Risk assessment focuses on identifying the threats and opportunities and assessing them according to risk appetites that I will mention later. In the figure, there is a network showing the relationships between risks from the Global Risks 2020 report. This is the report. It's published annually by the World Economic Forum. In this image, The risks indicated in red are social risks. The risks in orange are geopolitical risks. Those in blue are economic risks. Those in purple are technological risks. And those in green represent environmental global risks. Considering that all risks are interrelated and connected, the most interrelated risks are in the middle. We can easily see the social and environmental risks directly affect other risks, especially geopolitical risks. And in the short feature, next year, we will see, I think, technological risks more connected with social risks and environmental risks, probably in the next year's report. The situation is similar in our internal processes as well. Let's consider a natural disaster situation. It can be a pandemic or earthquake. One disaster firstly affects human and then business continuity, customer relations, contract obligations, sales, reputation, market share, cash flow, stock, supply chain, all of them. Although the risk is not financial at first picture, but it affects all of the financials. If there is a risk that can be eliminated by spending 1 unit of money for risk management, including insurance, the money spent to put the systems back, we can prevent the money spent to put the systems back from an average of 30, 50 units. So where to start to do ERM? And I want to mention the GRC concept because it is very related to risk management. GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, refers to a strategy for managing an organization's overall governance, enterprise risk management, and compliance with regulations. And governance means ensuring that organizational activities like managing IT operations are aligned in a way that supports the organization's business goals. And governance activities ensures that critical management information reaching the executive team is sufficiently complete, accurate, and timely to enable appropriate management decision-making, and provides the control mechanisms to ensure that strategies, directions, and instructions from management are carried out systematically and effectively. And that there is the compliance side, and it's for making sure that organizational activities are operated in a way that meets the laws and regulations impacting those systems. Compliance means conforming with stated requirements at an organizational level. It is achieved through management processes to identify the applicable requirements. Some companies, most of them are corporate businesses, conduct GRC concepts in their processes to manage all of these three together and effectively, because they are all related, such as the other processes. There are lots of risk definitions in risk universe, is risk management world, and I want to mention some of them. Risk universe is the list of risks the company faces or might face. It's a big pool, risk pool, and all of the risks are included in this risk universe. Risk capacity is the amount of risk an organization or individual requires to meet their goals. It is the amount of risk that the investor must take in order to reach their financial goals. Risk appetite is the level of risk that an organization is prepared to extend in pursuit of its objectives. Before action is deemed necessary to reduce the risk. Risk tolerance, it is similar to risk capacity, but risk tolerance is individual and related to the decision makers. Risk tolerance is the amount of risk that an investor is comfortable taking or the degree of uncertainty that an investor is able to handle. Risk target is the desired optimal level of the risk, and risk limit is a risk management measure used to prevent large contract losses. And there is inherent risk that we heard a lot about while doing risk assessments and risk management. It's an assessed level of raw or untreated risk. We call it natural level of risk or natural risk as well in a process or activity without doing anything to reduce the likelihood or mitigate the impact of a risk. It is the amount of risk before the application of all these risk reductions. On the right side of the slides, there are some definitions as well, and I will try to explain them with examples in the next slides. And risk management's evolution is similar to the evolution of quality assurance at some point, because before, quality was the business of the Department of Quality and management representatives and management. But now, quality is everyone's business, and we no longer doubt it. The same thing will be an absolute truth for ERM with enough maturity. There are basically three maturity levels of ERM. First of it is the compliance level and its legislative harmonization. It's about the legal issues, requirements, regulations we must do while doing ERM. It's a bit ad hoc things. And the second maturity level is management process level, and it's about management system. It's initial, repeatable, and process-based. And the third one, it's a strategic level, and it's a strategic tool as a risk. ERM is a strategic tool in this maturity level. It's managed well, and it has leadership commitment. We want our risk to talk with the strategies at the end. Of course, we observe the risk throughout our current activities to position risk management as a strategic tool. We need to improve our proactive approach skill. For example, periodic inspection and maintenance for cars is the usage of risk management as a tool to prevent the breakdowns, maintenance, and manually check the tire. The fuel systems are essential. When ERM becomes a strategic tool, we will be able to make decisions by monitoring the signals for risks before they occur. And we can use our resources more efficiently and progress safer in uncertainty. Basically, if you manage risk in 6 points, you can create an ERM for your organization. The first one is business continuity. Business continuity is 7 days and 24 hours issue, generally based on production and service planning, supply chain management, alternative suppliers, and continuous improvements. Although some sectors, such as telecommunication, production, and banking, are critical for business continuity, the main reason for the existing of all of our organizations is to continue the business, even in incidents or risk environments. Power cuts, system interruptions, major machine troubles, natural disasters, pandemics, a cut in the supply chain, and so on. All of them should be included in the risk assessment within the scope of business continuity. It is necessary to think about how best to react, recover, protect, and prevent interruptions and reduce catastrophic incidents and impacts. The second step of ERM is reputation. It's about the digital world, internet, media, crisis management, crisis communication, internal communication. Research shows that if you can establish the correct communication and cycle in the first hours of the crisis or risk situation or an event, you can reduce the impact of the threat or damage by 50%. Crisis communication is very important, Therefore, exercises and plans scenarios make a difference. Improper press releases, for example, can cause serious harm to the size of businesses. And in the 6 points of ERM, there is a big part which is related to finance, liquidity, and profitability. Balance is important at this stage. Finance is the result we want to reach. So it is extremely important. However, being too finance-oriented might cause failure in ERM, especially in multinational companies. The geographical, sociological analysis might be missed. At the same time, if the companies limit their risk approach by financial and measurable indicators, most of the companies do that sometimes. Some critical risks, such as natural disasters, interruptions in the production process, may be overlooked. Again, if we give an example from salespeople of multinational companies should know the characteristics of country, region, and customer profiles, and the risks of these environments that they are working in. The 5th point of ERM is the growth. The departments in an organization are each other's strategic partners, so they will grow together, and they will share their processes and risks as well. In strategic investments, we want to review and monitor key risk indicators, and we call them KRIs. It will give details about KRIs afterwards. And when strategic plans are created, they are necessary to be risk-oriented. We need to ask, does it affect our key risk indicators and key performance indicators while investing in a project, for example? Risk should be considered as strategic investment decision indicators. For example, your strategic goal is to make your brand the most valuable brand in its industry. As a result of risk analysis based on this target, you may not consider the risk of experiencing a problem in your supply chain at first, perhaps due to the political confusion in Asia. However, if it happens, this problem you will experience in the supply chain can pull your brand value down to an unexpected level. Key risk indicators are basic risk indicators, and they are criterions that gives us a good idea, and sometimes indirectly a good idea, and most importantly, we can easily monitor them while taking decisions. For example, we have some key performance indicators for sales in marketplace you might be aware of. Available customer costs, new customer acquisition costs, customer retention costs. They might be chosen as performance indicators that reflect the brand strength. If the results exceed a certain threshold or fall below a certain threshold, the action is taken, the management is informed. This threshold value or criteria is basically key risk indicator. I want to give some examples of key risk indicators. For example, for a business that has performance targets for customer satisfaction, they can set up some key risk indicators such as sales development rates, developments in competitor sales, customer satisfaction rates, payment delay rates. They might be the risk indicator subjects. For a manufacturer production, they might be unit costs, discard rates, number of production interruption. And the critical issue here is not to establish false correlations. For example, as ice cream consumption increases, it can be observed that drowning deaths of people in the seas or oceans increases. However, the correlation is the warming of the weather. There is no correlation between the ice cream consumption and deaths from drowning. But we need to establish true correlations while considering key risk indicators and key performance indicators together. And the sixth point of the ERM is sustainability. We can talk about social responsibility, wasting natural resources, etc. under this topic. It is important to maintain profitable growth. In fact, the change of focus points in other processes gives us tips on sustainability. For example, it is more important now than before to getting paid for than selling, keeping more than gaining customers, changing more than fixing. Being agile is more approach for sustainability. And there is also an information security risk that affects all of these processes, all of these points, including physical security. It is also an essential issue in our personal lives, and also it is the same in business life. So we won't let these pessimistic examples scare us. We will always have the chance to be aware of the opportunities related to the risks. And the risk management process consists of some steps. First one is the risk framework. Here, it is useful to start gap analysis focused on strategies and goals. We make certain assumptions to achieve the strategy and goals. Risks and risk management also arise here. It would be meaningful to address these assumptions with stress scenarios and simulations. Comparing what is expected and realized can give us ideas. At the same time, strategies, goals, realizations will indicate where we should focus. It is important to keep up to date, to influence measurements, observation, and decision-making mechanisms. Risk management is a continuous cycle, and communication and continuous monitoring is very important in all of the stages of risk management process. Risk management strategies are the risk decisions. And will we take the risk? Will we avoid it? Will we transfer it? It is a decision mechanism. In the world of risk management, there are four main strategies, but before that, we need to identify risk by the risk identification process, risk analysis, risk quantification, and risk prioritization with the decisions, strategies, and corporate commitments. These all three steps, identification, analysis, and prioritization, means risk assessment overall. And after assessing the risk and analyzing the risk, there is a step for risk mitigation and action plans. Will we take the risk? Will we avoid it? Will we transfer it? What decisions we need to take to manage the risk? In the world of risk management, as I mentioned, there are four main strategies for that. First one is to avoid it. This means not taking the risk and canceling the activity at all. The second one is reduce it. It is the decision triggers the mitigation plans, action plans to reduce the score of the risk. Third one is transfer it. This decision triggers the insurance management or outsourcing. And the last one is accepting it. This means taking the risk and not doing anything to mitigate or not taking actions and accepting possible impacts and losses. It's a continuous monitoring thing, risk management process, and risks are living assets. They don't stay the same. They can disappear. New risk can be added. Even more possible if there is new process. Risk scores may decrease or increase. A risk that has been evaluated recently can even reach the first ranks in risk scoring after that. Risk map might change, and it is important to follow the trends, global trends too. In the first step after the gap analysis and framework, we need to identify the risk. And to identify the risk, we need to write the right questions. We need to ask the right questions to right people and process owners and decision makers. While identifying the risk, discussions, surveys, questionnaires, workshops, audits can be held with the process owners. There can be many topics in your risk identification checklist. For example, raw material supply, dependency on one supplier or no, production, unplanned changes, control points, maintenance management, generators, power cuts, natural gas resources, deductions, backups, turnaround times, physical security, water supply management, industrial relations, information security, emergency management, compatibility issues such as license and legislation, sales, marketing, competitive elements, regional risks, global risks, commodity risk, financial risk, strategic risk, facility settlements, third-party risks like supply chain risks, insurance processes, underwriting processes, logistics, transport risks, machine breakdowns, etc. While identifying risk, we will find the risk together with the process owners. We can also relate them to the weaknesses and vulnerabilities. It is important to talk to many people here because after a while, the fingers will show the same place and we could see the issues we need to focus. What are the right questions to ask? There are some examples on the slides. Which issues you are focused the most in management reports, and you can also think about it for your organization right now. Or if you could change something in your business, what would you most want to fix or change? What are the issues that prevent the business from growing? What are the products, services, processes, and controls of that you put the most effort into? What are the most considered areas while allocating important resources? And what are the top things employees complain about? Now we can see an example of risk categories. Risk categories, we can create these risk categories while identifying risk or before identifying risk or after the process. In this example, there are 4 risk categories, basic categories, and there are subcategories. Strategic, operational, hazards, and financial categories. And for example, for the strategic part, there is pricing pressure as a subcategory. For operational part, there is commodity prices as a subcategory. And you can design and you can conduct this risk identification process according to your nature processes, according to your management uh, decision, and you can design it according to your business needs. And there is another example of risk identification, and you can see the categories and subcategories in this example as well. Like in communication part, in communication category, there is a sub-risk as poor communication, stakeholder dissatisfaction. After analyzing and registering risk, we use a lot of quantitative and qualitative analysis. In this example, you can see that there is a list of the risk and their descriptions and their sources. The source of the risk is the vulnerability of the risk and the reason of the risk. And we can register and type and record what is going wrong in that process. And after that, we can measure the risk by giving them rates in impact and likelihood, and we can then get the risk score at the end. In this risk registration, it is important to focus on important risks. If, for example, you have 120 important risks that have been identified for the organization, and 100 of them are about energy management, energy cuts, it will be immediately seen that this issue is very demanding and focusable. There is no time dimension on this risk register, so in case of urgent intervention to some risk, management can take actions on spot, actions and decisions immediately. Management has the right to decide at the end, but this right should be used rationally. Actions can also be taken for items that do not appear high on the risk map, but that will be easy to correct, for example, or you can see it as a feature risk, you can take actions for them as well. If you don't pay attention, risk map has a misleading feature. It can show risks as if they were independent of each other. However, these risks are in close relationship with each other, and so methods such as classifying risk and working with interaction diagrams can be useful in this stage. By making decisions and taking actions and mitigation plans regarding the risk, we will have risk strategies and we will avoid the risk, reduce risk, transfer risk, accept risk, etc. Sometimes actions can create risks. Uh, for example, sometimes we may have created or triggered another risk without being aware of the effects of our actions to reduce risk. Consider the first models of airbags in cars. These airbags exploded rapidly, even in small crashes in the first uh, models of airbags, causing unnecessary injuries to many. In such cases, it may be necessary to make a decision about which option is better. And there is another example of risk register on the screen, and you can create and design it according to your business and business needs and nature of your business. And there are risk maps. They are generally heat maps, and sometimes they are 5 to 5, measuring the impact and likelihood of the risks, and you can create criteria for the impact and likelihood, and you can define them. What is 1, what is 5, what does it mean when we say minor or major, for example. It's a 5 to 5 risk index heat map, and you can see there are um, red points, and there are green ones, yellow ones, and orange ones in heat map. And the management can take decision considering this risk map. For example, they can take actions, they can set up their risk limit according to this risk heat map, and they can say the risks who are measured more than 20 in score, we will reduce the risk, or we will consider taking actions, they could say. It's up to you, and it's up to your management. And there's another example of risk map. And sometimes it is important to measure the trends as well, annually. Mostly organizations prefer to assess the risk annually, or sometimes if the risks occurs uh, in a year, they can review it, not waiting for the annual review. And you can see here in the right top of the slide, there is a trend map, and it shows how a risk's impact and likelihood can change in a year. And you can use the traffic lights methodology for reviewing the risk trends. Risk management is a management system in which continuity is essential. The essence of that continuity can also be identifying, recording, and measuring the risk. It is very important to measure. You cannot manage that you cannot measure, what you cannot measure. Also, risk management offers companies the opportunity to evaluate their processes from a wider perspective. This perspective also provides sustainability to the company. Of course, when you look at a company that manages its risk well, you will see that it differs from its competitors in a long span with its stable and successful performance. The most important point here is the establishment of risk management in the business culture. Risk scoring matters because we can review if we exceed the limits, risk limits, and risk appetite. Before making any decision, and over time, managers start creating and reporting risk data. One of the biggest challenges today for risk professionals is the lack of risk data. As risk managers, we are concerned with creating risk data. However, it is the company's managers, members of executive committee, which we can first line of defense in an organization, which will ensure that we get the risk data. In the beginning of the webinar, I mentioned the risk concept, and I said that risk is not just a threat or is not just a danger; it's also an opportunity. But there is another concept of risk. It is the uncertainty in risk management. In 2007, the author Nassim Nicholas Taleb put forward the concept of black swans, and he defined them as unforeseen risk events that may have a major impact, such as the September 11 attacks or the Indian Ocean tsunami of December 2004. This idea has rapidly taken hold and has been applied to recent events ranging from the credit crunch to BP's Deepwater Horizon oil spill to the Arab Spring. And we can add Brexit and COVID-19 pandemic to this concept. Today, black swan events like these are regarded as one of the three types of risks that organizations face. It is now generally accepted that organizations will face three types of risk. The first is described as unknown risks and current risks, where there are sufficient knowledge and understanding to identify the risk level to implement sufficient control measures. The second type is the risks of emerging threats with limited data in terms of accurately predicting the probability and impact of future events. This requires the organization to make a judgment. The third group of the risks from threats that have not been identified without warning. These are called black swan risks. This term is coined from a story that says before the discovery of the New World, it was assumed that all swans were white because a black swan had never been seen. It was assumed that they did not exist, but then it is discovered that there are black swans as well. True black swan risks have three characteristics. First, they are unexpected. Second, they have an extreme impact. And third, it becomes clear with hindsight that they could have been predicted. By their nature, black swan events should only occur at unpredictable intervals. Yet recent experience suggests events that fit the definition of black swans are happening more and more frequently nowadays in the recent years. For example, USA elections, Brexit, COVID-19 global pandemic, etc. So black swans actually turning gray. Overall, the message is clear. Risk landscape that has now emerged means organizations need to be agile and innovative in the way they approach risk. They need to be prepared and they need to be agile. This now needs to be applied to an overall approach that supports strategy and risk together. And we should manage the risk holistically, considering all of the process owners and also the trends in global. And there are some important points to consider while creating ERM and managing it. First one is the gut feel. It's generating feelings and ideas that are not based on logic or analytics. Uh, it is important to prevent gut feel while deciding about the risks. Second phase is formality. It's it is staying in theory, doing it just to do it, doing it just for the legal requirement, for example, doing it just for getting, uh, doing for just for the customer needs, but not doing it holistically or corporately with an awareness. It's the formality and it's so dangerous for risk management, ERM. The third one is silo effect. It's the lack of common goals and communication between the units and departments of an organization. And silo of effect is also means you don't have any common goals. Every department, every unit has its goals, and they don't think about other um, main goals, major goals of the organization. And we need to prevent silo effect while doing ERM. And the other one is savings and finance orientation. Of course, savings and finance is so important, but savings, cost reductions become, if savings and cost reductions become the first and only target of process management and risk management, we can overlook the other risks in other processes and in the wide picture. The other one is neglecting the end user and customer. It is the change or adaptation made has no effect on the results. And the other one is lack of training and awareness, not working in our own systems and processes, not providing training and awareness to the employees and process owners. And this other one is not being agile, proceeding with strict goals, such as achieving it all the first time and not considering the risk while doing it. It's the dangerous thing to do in ERM. And there is other point to consider. It is unnecessary automation. For example, you 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 are about to buy a tool or software about while managing enterprise risk or GRC, and you are investing in an automated process that is not well managed and waiting for miracle results for it. It doesn't work for ERM. First, you need to design your processes, you need to design your ERM cycle. And the other one is ignoring macro trends such as globalization, digital revolution, mass migration, climate change, pandemic, etc. So, assuming we will all continue to live in a world where predicting and controlling all risk events and incidents and their impacts is no longer possible, what is an appropriate approach for managing risk? In our view, most organizations should look to build their own current ERM frameworks by making three changes to the way they frame and think about risk. First, developing a risk-aware culture. And second, explicit focus on risk appetite. And the third is alignment of risk and strategy. When defining an ERM process tailored to the organization's needs, it helps to have a suitable framework as a point of reference. There are different frameworks for ERM. One of them is international standards ISO 31,000 risk management standard. It's the principles and guidelines on implementation. And the second one is COSO. It's the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Tradeway Commission. It has Enterprise Risk Management Framework. It's an integrated framework, works for ERM as well. The third one is BS 31100 Code of Practice for Risk Management Standard. And the other one is FERMA A Risk Management Standard. It is the Federation of European Risk Management Association standard to manage risk. And the other one is the Open Compliance and Ethics Group, OCEG's Red Book version 2. It's the GRC capability model, and OCEG is a non-profit think tank that is dedicated to achieving a world where every organization and every person strives to achieve objectives, address uncertainty, and act with integrity. But this ISO 31000 risk management standards and COSO are the most used frameworks by the companies who are conducting ERM. There are also now the best practices in this field. Thank you for attending this webinar about ERM by CFE certification. It has been a pleasure being with all of you today, and thank you all for your patience. I wish you all a very good evening. If you have questions, I will now check the Q&A section, and I will start to answer them. You can always send an email to me. You can see on the screen my email address, and you can also call us from our landline. Our team of certification and training is ready to help you about the issues about ERM and other issues. Thank you again. Have a good afternoon. Stay safe. Have a nice day.